All right, and thank you once again for coming to check us out here today at New York Turnix. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those below. Also, fuck. Thanks for coming to check us out here today again at New York Turnix. I'd like to wish you and your family a happy holidays. Today we're going to be doing another recipe. This is going to be holiday stuffing. It's going to have cranberries and walnuts in it. It's going to have sausage. It's going to be pretty awesome. We're going to do that recipe, so I'd like to ask you to stick with me. We're going to do that, and before we even begin, of course, as always, I'd like to ask you to leave a like for the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that notification bell so you're notified anytime we do leave a new recipe or video or whatever on the channel. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we have the oven preset to 400. Let's get that going. Okay, so for this recipe, one of the first things we're going to need is, I'm going to start off with a base cornbread stuffing. And we're going to use some cranberries, dried, sweet, whole cranberries. We're also going to use a yellow onion. Have a little bit of sage and celery. Let's see where we're going with this. We have some standard stuffing ingredients. And then I have some breakfast sausage. I'm going to use the breakfast sausage, break that up and get that incorporated in there. We have our chicken broth. Bone broth, really good stuff. And we have walnuts. I'm gonna get these toasted. We have a little bit of thyme. We also have a pepper. I'm gonna use this orange pepper. And of course, we have our quail. So one of the first things I'm gonna do is roast these nuts dry. All right, so we got these nuts roasting dry on the stove right now. I'm going to let those roast for a minute. Give it about 3 or 4 minutes. Medium heat. I'm going to turn that down. There we go. All right, so they're a little brown now. It's been a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and take these off of the stove. Let them cool. Also about 5 minutes. All right, and after they've cooled down a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and put them on a chopping block. The weight on these, this is less than a half a pound. This is a third of a pound that I'm working with here of walnuts that I got in the bulk section of my local grocery store. So, you know, normally I don't do measurements, but I'm telling you what I have here. I may or may not use this all. I'll let you know as this video progresses. All right, I'll shut it off. And again, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have any recipes you'd like to share, leave those down in the comments. I'll remind you again at the end of the video. I'd love to hear what you guys have to offer. It's holidays, so it's all about sharing, right? So I'm going to continue to chop these up so they make sense for stuffing. And now you can put that aside in a bowl. All right, got 2 celery. I'm gonna chop those up. Start at the top, gonna use it all. Until we get to the bitter end. Chop some more. All right, and of course that's gonna go in a bowl too. Go ahead and pull that right off of there. Wind this stuff right back up. The sage smells really good. So I'm going to chop the whole thing. It's a really lemony smell to it. I'm going to roll it right up on itself. Almost like a chiffonade, but not quite because it's sloppy. And then I'm just going to start chopping. Turn and chop. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this stem. Turn and chop, turn and chop. All right, so we got that chopped up pretty nice. We'll get that put aside into a bowl. And we're gonna clean up for our next ingredient. And that's gonna be this pepper. Chop the top off. Get in here. Pull all the seeds out. And this pepper was on its way out in my refrigerator, so I decided to use it for this recipe because why let food go to waste, you know? Peppers are pretty good in stuffing, so it adds a little bit of color, a little bit of texture to the recipe, and also saves on food waste. So why the hell not? I'm going to use the top of it as well. I'm going to chop all this up. This would be easier if I flipped it over, right? Do a nice coarse chop on these, or whatever you decide to add. It could be mushrooms, it could be, you know, a different kind of onion, It could be your favorite vegetable, whatever. You know, it's your stuffing. I'm just adding what I have in my refrigerator. So I'm going to do a nice coarse chop on it, making sure the pieces aren't too big, aren't too small. And to the side it goes, into a bowl. And last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and get our tear-inducing onion cut up. Yes. Coarse chop, just like the rest. All right, now we have some chopped onion. You can chop it up a little bit more if you want. That's gonna just mess with your face. So, you know, have at it. That's you. And as does everything else, onions go to the side. Oh, excuse me, onion. All right, so we put our onion away and to the side. We did it without crying. It's pretty awesome. All right, so there we have walnut, celery, onion, pepper, thyme, sage. Sausage time. All right. Going back to this, I'm going to use a whole half stick of butter. Let that melt a little bit. And we're going to crumble up some breakfast sausage. And turn the heat down. And about 3 minutes in, I'm going to start adding the onion, the bell pepper, and that celery that we cut up earlier. All right, it's been cooking for a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and, just like I said earlier, I'm going to add that bell pepper, the onion, and the celery. Get all that added in. Never forget the salt. Or the pepper. And I'm going to add about a cup of cranberries. Mix those in there. Let them cook for about a minute, minute and a half. Then we're going to take this off of the heat. They're going to get a little bit fatter in there. Only because they're going to get a little bit, you know, the moisture from the butter. All that butter that we put in there. So they're dehydrated and they're going to get a little bit bigger. So expect that. And again, I'm going to let it go for about 40 seconds to a minute. Take it off of the heat. All right, so we are back to our cutting board. I'm going to take a really big bowl here that I probably can't get all the way on camera. I'm going to take this big bowl. I'll go ahead and put our walnuts in there. Our sage. Again, I'm only using about half of that. And use a pinch and then another pinch of thyme for this recipe. And then I have a 12-ounce bag of cornbread stuffing. I'm going to put the whole thing in there. All right, so I'm going to get some of this stock. And what I've got here is bone broth. This is chicken stock. I'm going to use roughly, I don't even know, what about a cup and a half, 2 cups, whatever. You see what I'm doing here? All right, and I've also got a fresh egg. That egg came from a chicken that I know. I'm gonna combine the ingredients. Mix that up in there. We'll take our dry mixture, mix it up just a little bit from the bottom on up. You'll be able to smell it real nice. So now you'll want to go ahead and get your mixture that you have from the stove. Mix that in right here in the bowl. And then you're going to start folding that together. Here I have it, and again I'm going to start folding it together. And that mixture that I made with the egg and the batter is going to come into play momentarily. I was going to use that to wet this whole thing just a little bit. We're not going to use all of it. I don't think we are, at least. Then again, we just may end up using all of it. But if you've ever made stuffing before, you're going to start to recognize that consistency that's going to be perfect. And I honestly believe that, yeah, we're going to be using the rest of this mixture here. But that's all right, because I think I made the perfect amount. I'm going to add a little bit more pepper. Keep mixing. We have this just about perfect. I'm going to add a small dab of chicken stock to it. just to make sure it doesn't get too dry, because we're going to transfer this over to a baking dish and put it in the oven until it crusts over on top. All right, so we've got this set aside. We're going to get this in the oven at the 400 degrees that we preheat the oven for earlier. We've got some set aside that I'm going to stuff these 4 quail that I have set aside here with, and then I'm going to, do that recipe, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to get this in the oven again, 400 degrees. We'll stuff our quail, and I'll see you momentarily. If the stuffing's cool enough, you can use your hands, which is a little bit easier. Of course, you're going to make a mess. But again, that's part of the fun, isn't it? So I'm going to use my hands to get these birds stuffed. Get as much of that stuffing in there as I can. If you're doing this, don't be afraid to get your fingers up in there. I mean, you've probably gone through the processing anyway, so you shouldn't have a problem with any of this. It's no different from stuffing a turkey or a chicken. And luckily, I still have a little bit left in the bowl. I'm gonna go ahead and use the rest of it. Let's stuff this bird, this last bird. My estimate was off by just a little bit. So, any loose stuffing that fell to the side, I'm gonna grab, get into our birds. And then they're gonna go into the oven at the 400 degrees that the stuffing is in there at already, as soon as that stuffing comes out. Okay, and there we have our final product out of the oven. Again, we cooked this at 400 degrees in the oven for about 20 minutes, a little bit more, a little bit less. I didn't time it exactly. Again, 400 degrees will do you perfectly. Once you can smell it throughout the house and the top is brown and crispy, time to take it out of the oven. Here's your final product. If you have any recipes you'd like to share, do so in the comments. I'd love to see what you have to offer. All right, and here we have our quail. Our quail was put in the oven for about 40 minutes at the same 400 degrees that we cooked the stuffing at. I put the stuffing in the quail before it was cooked, so the stuffing cooked with the quail in this case. The quail is temped out to about 172 degrees. I did make sure that it was cooked thoroughly before I took it out, and here we have our final product. And thank you once again for coming to check us out here today at New York Turnix. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those below. Also, leave a like for the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Hit that notification bell so you're notified anytime we do leave a new video on the channel. And if you have any recipes you'd like to share, please leave those in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Thank you once again for coming to check us out here today at New York Turnix.